Okay, good evening, everybody. Let's call the Wednesday, August 5th, 2020 Reno Planning Commission meeting to order. And let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Carl, do you have your flag?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, and Mr. Commissioner Munoz, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And here, Michelle, can you do the roll call, please?
Okay. So I have John Marshall,
Here.
Peter Gower,
Here.
Mark Johnson,
Here.
Arthur Munoz, you need to unmute. He's here, but he's
Here.
on mute. Okay, good. Alex Felto is absent. Paula Levis is absent. Kathleen Taylor,
Here.
we have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Moving on to agenda number 3, public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Michelle, do we have any public comment?
No, we did not receive any public comment for this item.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to item number 4, approval of the minutes.
Commissioner Gower, move to approve.
Commissioner Johnson, I'll second.
Any discussion? Does anybody wish to abstain?
I wish to abstain.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Munoz. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
This is for both sets, right?
No, this is just for June
Sure.
17th. Oh,
Oh, sorry, 4.1.
yeah, can we do one at a time, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so this is for the approval of Reno City Planning Commission minutes from June 17th. We have a first and a second, one abstention. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item 4.2.
Commissioner Gower, move to approve.
Commissioner Johnson, I'll second.
Okay,
So
I
who was-
have,
Who made the second?
I think Commissioner Marshall did.
Thank you.
Any discussion? Anybody wish to abstain?
I wish to abstain.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Fantastic, motion carries. On to public hearings. So item 5.1, this is, we're gonna open public hearing case number LBC 20000064, Aspired Clear Acre Zone Change. This is for a zoning map amendment. I believe we have a presentation from the applicant, Michelle?
Yes, just one moment. We're bringing them in.
Thank you.
Yep, sorry about that. It's Dane Hilliard here from Green Street. I'm trying to figure out how to start my video. There we go. So you guys can see me. There I am. Good evening. This is different. First time I've done one of these Zoom meetings with you all. So anyway, this project, this parcel is surrounded by MF30 land. And we're bringing an MF14 site, or requesting bringing an MF14 site into the MF30 zone designation. Parcel surrounded by apartments on 3 sides, and across the street it basically is the 395 freeway, the NDOT yard, and the freeway. It's real close to the intersection of Clearacre and McCarran. Justin with Reno Engineering has site plan, et cetera. You can pull up real quick for us so you all can see it. You there, Justin?
I believe Justin is muted.
Says his mic isn't working. He has a PowerPoint, so I'll just tell him to put that up. I'm not technically advanced enough to put a PowerPoint up on this.
We can do it for you, just one moment.
Okay.
And just
Basically,
let
yeah,
us
we just
know
wanna
when
see the
to
site
advance
plan.
the screen.
Here we go. Justin, why don't you show the vicinity map, and then, there we go. So there's the parcel MF14. That jagged line on the north boundary is the ore ditch. There is a vacant parcel next to it that says SF, and then above that is apartments, MF30 on the other sides, MF30. The red to the right is the NDOT staging area for the freeway construction. And then you can see the freeway. The McCarran interchange is just right up the top of the screen there. So we love the location. We think it warrants more density. It's close to the freeway, close to shopping, less travel. So basically, we think we're bringing in what's kind of surrounding it. It's definitely an improvement to the area. There's currently some old houses on it, old type farmhouses from the 60s and 70s that are rentals that we'll demolish, obviously. So, any questions on what we're trying to do here? And we'll talk more about the project itself when we get to the SUP, which is the next agenda item.
Does that conclude your presentation for right now?
I think so for the zone change, yes. We'll get more detail on the project itself on the next item.
Okay, thank you very much. I saw Heather, do you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Michelle, would it be easy for you to pull up my presentation, please?
Yes, just one moment, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Heather Manzo, Associate Planner with the City of Reno, for the record. And Mr. Hilliard did a good job of explaining the request that's before you this evening with regard to the MF14 to MF30 zoning map amendment. And to get started, I wanted to note the request is in conformance with the master plan. And do I have control of the slide, Michelle?
No, you don't. Please just
Okay,
let us know
please.
when you want us to advance.
Next slide, please. And so the subject site has already been identified. Next slide, please.
Hang on, Heather. We're having a little
Okay,
bit
no problem.
difficult.
So as we get to the next slide, it'll show a comparison between the existing and proposed zoning. And as you'll note, the site is surrounded by MF30 or commercial zoning today. The MF14 is a remnant of a previous time, and this request seems to fit very well within the character of the neighborhood. If the slides aren't working, I can just go ahead and give the rest of my presentation on the zoning map amendment. In general, the two main differences between MF14 and MF30 are, of course, the allowable density for the zone. In addition, there are some, thank you, Michelle, there is an introduction of additional commercial uses. I did want to point out, though, that most of those uses would require a special use permit because actually all of them would, because the property is adjacent to a single family residential to the north. So really for the zoning map amendment, staff is recommending approval. I did want to note that I received about 4 emails or phone calls from residents. Postcards for both this and the special use permit went out around the same time. And so a lot of folks included just one case number where they may have been speaking about the cases in general. So I just wanted to note that concerns that were raised by the folks who were noting their opposition really were surrounding an intensification to the zoning, which would result in additional residences in this neighborhood, and the impacts that it would have on traffic, noise, pedestrian concerns, and possible increased crime. So those are the comments that were provided. I did want to note that a traffic study was included with both applications that noted that the change from MF14 to MF30 would not have a negative impact on the level of service for the area. And since we're not talking about a project at this point, that really does conclude my presentation. We are recommending approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Heather. Let's bring it back to the Commission for disclosures. Start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm familiar with the site and received and read emails.
Commissioner Marshall?
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz?
Same disclosures.
And Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, same.
Commissioner Taylor, same disclosures. Michelle, this is a public hearing. Do we have any public comment on this item?
We received public comment for this item, and they were all forwarded to you and have been entered into the record.
Okay, thank you very much. So we are going to close public comment on this time, and bring it back to the commission for questions. Who would like to start?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson. Quick question.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. Quick question, Heather. You noted in the changes, the differences for the commercial type properties that would all require a special use permit, mainly due to the single family zoning adjacent to this. It seems like that single family zoning is a bit of an outlier in the area. If just conceptually speaking, if that wasn't single family zoned and was changed to some other zoning, would there still be the requirement for the special use permit for some of these commercial uses?
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. That's a great question, and thanks for allowing me to clarify. Because a special use permit would be required for non-residential adjacency or non-residential uses adjacent to residentially zoned property, it would actually be triggered for any commercial use on this property.
Okay, so it's not just the single family, it's actually the multifamily that's across the street as well and adjacent.
And adjacent to the property, yeah. It's surrounded on the south and west side by multifamily uses and zoning.
Okay, thank you. Madam Chair, that was my only question on this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other questions from the commission? I do not see any hands. Discussion? Motion?
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you very much. Case number LDC 20-00064, Aspire Clear Acres Zone Change. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make all of the required zoning map findings.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second that, Arthur Munoz.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. I have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Michelle, do you want to take roll call, please?
Yes, I will. John Marshall?
Yes.
Peter Gower?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Arthur Munoz?
Yes.
Sorry. And Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you, sorry. So we have
Thank you.
5-0.
Go ahead. Thank you. Motion passes. And I'd say good luck with your project, but I think we're gonna hear from you in just a second.
Thank you.
So let's move on to item 5.2, case number LVC 2000065, Aspire Multifamily. This is a request for a special use permit. Do we have a presentation by the applicant?
Yes, we do. Thank you. I'd like to start with a kind of a background of the project itself. It's a family affordable project. We've already received from the city of Reno bond allocation for the project. We've already received home funds, which is a big process to go through. The project will be 100% affordable family design. We just completed one similar to it in South Reno called Steamboat, and that's a 360-unit affordable project that filled up as quickly as the units were completed and now has over a year wait list already. There's huge demand for these types of units. They're designed for income earners in the $15 to $25 an hour range. The rents are about half of what a market rate unit would be. And the demand is basically endless here in Reno and Sparks. So it's filling a need. We're the largest, not only apartment developer, but affordable developer here in town. Been here for 25 years. We've developed, we're currently under construction on 1,100 units, some market rate and some affordable. And I can just tell you the demand is endless for this type of product. An example, the units are completely, you can't tell the difference. They have washer and dryers in the unit, granite countertops, there's a fitness, there's a pool, et cetera. 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The rents on a 1 bedroom are in the $800 a month range. The 2 bedrooms are in the $900, and the 3 bedrooms in the $1,000. That includes water, sewer, trash, hot water, all the amenities. They pay their own electric bills, everything they pay. So Justin has some slides. We can show you some elevations, a landscape plan. We can walk through that real quick, Justin, if you want to pull that up. So again, the design is very similar to the project we just completed in South Reno. We're also under construction on another one in Northwest Reno. Very similar design, saying that we're winding through construction. Again, as the units complete, they're all occupied basically the next day. Many people can't afford market rate rents in Reno, as we know, and this is designed to meet that need of a little bit lower income. They're not extremely low income. They're considered 60% of median. So, Justin, you got it? Can you pull it up? I think his mic is muted.
No, he's not muted. We just can't hear him.
Heather, if he can't do it, in our application, we have the elevations and site plan on it. Is it possible for you to pull it up?
It sure is. Michelle, if you want to switch over to my presentation, we can work with that.
We have the PowerPoint
And
if
it'll
you want
just
us
be
to bring it up.
the second page of the presentation. Or if you want, Dane, I can just go into my presentation and turn it over to
We
the
have
Planning Commission
Justin's
for question and
PowerPoint if you
answer.
want us to bring it up.
That'd be great. Oh, there we
Oh,
go.
perfect.
So it's 180 units. It's 25% 1 bedrooms, 50% 2 bedrooms, and 25% 3 bedrooms, which really fits a big need across all spectrums. Like I mentioned, there's some old houses that will be demolished on site. In working with staff, they had some concerns, one being pedestrian connectivity to the commercial areas to the north, and we worked with staff and are agreeing to work with the Ore Ditch people and cover part of the ditch to allow connecting sidewalks. If you maybe go to the next screen. And also staff, I believe NDOT requested, yeah, there we go. NDOT requested additional expansion of the traffic study. We did the typically required traffic study, and we expanded it based on that request. And as Heather mentioned, we're not negatively impacting any intersections. They had us take us up to the Karen area in addition to what's typically surrounding a project. Maybe next slide. Here's the site again. The ore ditch and that connectivity I'm talking about is at that right top corner, where the arrow is pointing basically. That where the trees are is the ore ditch, which is our northerly boundary. And right now the ore ditch extends basically real close to the edge of Clear Acre Lane. So we're going to be covering a portion of that to allow the sidewalk to directly connect to the sidewalk to the north. Next slide, please. This is our site plan layout. You can see where the ore ditch lays out. Also, Heather requested that we include a landscape buffer up on the northerly boundary, so that's now included in the plan. We have primary entry is on Clear Acre. The community building, all that is right there. This will be a gated community. There'll be secondary access on the southerly boundary to Trip Drive. We worked with fire and worked on the circulation fire trucks, et cetera, which was all incorporated in the plan. Let's make the, you can see the building types. There's two building types, a 12-plex and a 24-plex. They're all 3-story. And we go to the next slide. This is the more of a visual site plan where you can see landscaping areas, the pool. The clubhouse itself has the offices, mail room, storage, like Amazon storage boxes, as well as a fitness center and a small community gathering room for the kitchen. And we have some other on-site amenities, not really shown yet, but we'll have a tot lot, try to incorporate a dog pet zone if we can. And again, it's all going to be fenced and gated. Next slide would be great. This is basically a breakdown, like I mentioned, of the unit types. Also, in our traffic study, we had a parking analysis completed, and we're over parking what the parking requirement would be. There's a national affordable housing parking standard, and I believe it was requiring something like 170 parking spaces, and we're definitely higher. I think we're closer to 270. I guess Justin can't chime in. Let's try the next slide. It might show that. We're here. We're at the elevation. So again, this is very similar to our South Reno Steamboat project. 3-story. Every unit has a balcony or a patio of their own. Lots of storage. Like I mentioned, washer and dryers in the unit, full kitchens, full amenities in the units. Next slide. Just showing the side elevations. And these are obviously fire sprinklered. All ground floor units are fair housing and 8 adaptable units. There's no elevators, so the upper floors are not. Next slide. That's back to the surrounding uses. So basically, it's that's the project design we're proposing. Again, the demand is endless for this type of product at this income level and rent level. And our financing is lined up. We're hoping to get this approved tonight and move quickly into construction drawings. We anticipate closing our bond financing by year end and pulling a demolition permit, and then starting construction, demolition right away, and then construction start in spring would be the intent. And again, we're local. Our whole team's local. I've been here for a long time, and we love Reno, and we're very happy to be able to help contribute to the affordable housing problem we have here. And I'm open for any questions.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Heather, do you have a presentation?
I'm just gonna utilize the applicant since it's already pulled up, and I'll just put it on the landscape slide would be fine. Michelle, thank you. And so good evening again, Heather Manzo, Associate Planner for the record. So this is a special use permit for the multifamily development. It's 180 dwelling units, and it really is, we're not really looking at affordability or market rate as a part of this request, although the applicant has noted that he is planning to build an affordable project here. The applicant did go over all of the details really about the project and provided you with the elevations and such. So I'll just go over some of the public comments that we received on the special use permit portion of their request, and then kind of respond. A couple of, let's see, I got in combination in total, including one specific to the multifamily, 5 public comments regarding this request. Some of the comments, and these were comments in opposition of the request, of course. So some of the comments and concerns that were shared as a part of this process is that approval of the multifamily development would result in a stressed school capacity issue with surrounding schools, that there aren't safe pedestrian routes and student routes to the schools within walking distance, that it would have an impact on traffic and sewer and water services, and that crime may increase and that property values go lower. I did want to make sure that I let you know each of the concerns that folks had made, since they had provided those ahead of the meeting. And I did want to address many of those. So I want to start out by first saying, when I drove through this neighborhood and did kind of a search on properties within this neighborhood, there really hasn't been a reinvestment in this neighborhood in a little over 30 years. And so this would be the first new development of multifamily housing in quite some time. And so as Dana pointed out, he's finding that there is really a need, and our master plan has identified a need for kind of a variety of different housing types, including this one. With the comments that had been provided, I did want to note we didn't receive any negative feedback from Washoe County School District, noting that there would be any issue with providing students that are going to be living here with the ability to attend the local schools in the area. In addition to that, as Dane had identified, on the northeast corner of the site, they're going to extend some off-site improvements across the ore ditch to actually provide for a better connectivity of the area here as far as sidewalks go. Without that additional improvement, there would be a disconnected sidewalk between existing development to the north on Clearacre and this project. So that'll help to make a safer pedestrian environment should this project be approved. In addition to that, the applicant had provided an initial traffic study, and based on comments received from departments and agencies, had provided a follow-up traffic study that showed kind of a broader scope of their analysis. And as your staff report will note, there's adequate level of service to accommodate this project without affecting level of service within this area. So staff is recommending approval of this special use permit. I did want to note that there is a condition that we don't always see on projects, and that's because this is being reviewed concurrent to the zoning map amendment. And so condition number 2 will require that the zoning map amendment be in effect before any building permits or any permits for this project could be pulled. So I wanted to note that there are other conditions that just address the infrastructure and extended offsite improvements for the sidewalks as well. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Heather. Commissioners, disclosures, Commissioner Johnson?
Again, same disclosures, familiar with the site and received and read emails.
Commissioner Marshall?
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Munoz?
I have the same disclosures. I do have a quick question.
We'll get to questions in just a second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Same disclosures.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower, same disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, same disclosures. So this is a public hearing. Michelle, do we have any further public comment?
No, we did not receive any other public comment on this item.
I didn't hear if you said yes or no.
Oh, I'm sorry, he muted me. We did not receive any new public comment for this item other than what I sent you, and that has been entered into the record.
Great, thank you very much. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions. And let's start with Commissioner Munoz.
Commissioner Munoz, real quick question, or actually 2. when was the MF14, how old is that? How old is the MF14?
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. I don't have that information. If it's important to your decision this evening, I can take the time to look up the ordinance adoption on that.
Okay, and then the second thing is how many total units are going on the property?
So the proposal is for 180 units.
Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners, questions?
Madam Chair, I have a question for Heather.
Commissioner Gower?
Heather, regarding condition 9, I think we've encountered this in previous projects where we essentially have a condition that is contingent upon the decision of another entity that the city of Reno doesn't really have any control over. How, I should know, but how do we reconcile that? And this one specifically relates to the Oreditch Company's essentially review and approval of the pedestrian amenity there.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. The way that the condition is written is that the applicant needs to work with the Oreditch Company based on the design that they've proposed and that's in your packet for their potential approval. Our engineering staff was pretty comfortable that they've seen projects like this come through in coordination with Oreditch, and they've been willing to facilitate those improvements. However, at the end of this condition, it's specifically to the approval of the Community Development Department, and that really does make it clear that if for some reason the Oreditch doesn't approve the design or some design that would include the pedestrian connectivity, that's something that can be brought back to our department for approval of the permit.
Yeah, I guess as long as it's clear to the city, I didn't quite read it that way with that last clause there after the Oreditch Company, but just as long as it's clear that it's a sort of an and/or scenario where it has to, if for some reason the Oreditch Company, isn't on board, then another scenario, another plan would be developed, to the approval of community development that provides the same outcome here that we're looking for.
Yes, that's correct. Our engineering team was comfortable with the fact that they're the final deciding body if it can't be done based on the Oreditch review.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Other questions for staff or the applicant? Commissioner Marshall?
There's a question for Mr. Hilliard. You are significantly overparked. Why?
The experience we have on these types of projects with the 3-bedroom units particularly is there's often 2 cars in that household, sometimes 3 with roommate situations. So rather than having cars park on the street, we prefer to park on site. And again, this goes back to other projects of similar unit bedroom counts on this. And the national affordable housing parking standard, we think is a little bit light on our, more suburban community. It is a national standard based on, I think, averages. So we like to be, we prefer to have a little bit of extra parking, but not enough, basically.
I note you were 1/8 of a mile away from public transit. And, the parking is additional parking means more blacktop, I assume, and we're worried about heat island effect and all sorts of other concerns. I mean, it can be used, the parking spaces that could be used for other purposes, landscaping, et cetera, for your dog park or whatever. So it's a choice between being, overparked or, put to some other use. Is there, and I noticed that the ITE, even using ITE, was still significantly under what you're proposing. I know in other capacities, in other locations, jurisdictions are looking to decrease the amount of parking necessary in order to make better use of the landscape. You really feel like you need this amount of parking?
To be honest with you, we started out with the City of Reno parking standard as our base draft for the site. I'm gonna do a quick calculation. We try to park at 1.6 on the multifamily projects that have the larger unit counts. Let me see if that is. We're comfortable with that number.
So 180,
Yeah, that's still high. I think
90.
we still can look at, because we would like to have some more amenities. We did not count street parking, and there's 2 street frontages that we could utilize if there was a problem. But yes, we would definitely be up for reducing some of that and adding in a little bit more amenities for sure.
Angela, what is your thoughts on the extent of the over parking on this project?
Yeah, this is kind of an anomaly. I mean, typically it's the other direction where the applicant is asking to reduce parking. Because this is a unique product, and I would say that because Mr. Hilliard develops these types of apartment projects all over Reno, and based on his market needs, he knows what his clientele is and kind of what the anticipated parking is. So from that perspective, if he feels that his end user is going to have roommates and there's going to be multiple people living in these individual apartments, I would look to him for his discretion on this. If he feels that the end product needs more parking, then I can justify that. Again, typically it goes the other direction where the end user is saying we want less parking. But because this is a known product, a known kind of a niche type of apartment project, just because of the user, I would look to Mr. Hilliard to make sure that this meets his market and his tenant base.
Do we have in city code or master plan, a maximum?
Yes. If I may?
Yeah.
Thank you. So Commissioner Marshall, to answer your questions, what the applicant did in their initial proposal is they provided parking based on what the city standard is, which is 342 parking spaces if there's no affordable component to it. And with the affordable component, it would equal the 285 that they've proposed on their site plan. What they also did, because the code does allow for them to provide alternative parking calculations based on nationally accepted sources, they provided an ITE study that showed that 218 spaces is really the national recommendation for this type of product. And so what the applicant did is didn't go as low as the national recommendation from the ITE, but also not as high as standard, multifamily development would require. And so it's about 60 spaces lower than what you would see on a market rate development. So I think that the 285 is pretty fair when you take into consideration the numbers that kind of work into this plan. And I hope that helps to answer your questions and address your concerns.
That really means that the baseline really that we should be looking at is the city requirement, which is in the 300s.
That's correct.
So in some ways they're underparked, except when they're overparked when they're using their own baseline. Okay, thank you. I have another question. It's really more of a observation, Angela, about Exhibit 5.2E, which is the memo from the school district. We used to get, they were getting better and better in terms of showing the actual enrollments, how many students they were going to add, what the beginning and what the end occupancy percentages were. Plus they started doing, kind of approved but unbuilt numbers to give us an idea of really what the capacity is for schools. And this is just a chart of current and anticipated levels, enrollment levels to capacity. So it doesn't really give us a basis on which to say. I mean, I'm assuming that these are relatively small numbers, and so, and aside from, they all excite for their current level for trainer, but they're not going to come online, that there's enough capacity to absorb. But just an observation that would really be useful to go back to the good information that we had before. And that's all the questions and statements that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Marshall. Any other questions?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Heather, I have a question for you on, I guess, condition number 7, which seems like our pretty standard condition, talking about, the analysis of the sewer system. But when I get into the staff report, there's some questions and concerns. It appears to me that there's concerns because it's tying into an existing 12-inch line, and some notes about potential flow monitoring that would need to occur. Is there concern on the city side that the capacity might not be there as a result of this?
Thank you for the question. So I think it may be more of a writing style. We received comments from different folks in engineering, and in discussions with the team, there was no noted concern with potential capacity to serve the site.
Okay, and I'm comfortable that the condition is in there. I just wanted to understand that. And then the second question I have is actually, Dane, this is for you, and I guess I would ask if Michelle could put the landscape plan back on the screen, because I have a question on some of the circulation, internal circulation on the site.
Just one moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. So, Dane, the question that I have, I like the discussion about the sidewalk connectivity along Clear Acre Lane, but the project as it's presented now, I have some concerns about internal connectivity from a pedestrian standpoint. Essentially, the 3 buildings on the south side of the project, there is no defined link, accessible link with crosswalk and basically sidewalk access from those to the clubhouse and the pool area. I see one for the units on the west, but those units on the south, not only do they not link with a pedestrian link to the major amenities, but the sidewalk heading towards Clear Acre also doesn't make it all the way out there. So was that intentional, or is there, what are we looking at there?
No, that's unintentional. It was an oversight on our team. So we definitely would be connecting that, and we can make it a condition for sure to connect those 3 buildings to the, south, to the central part of the project, and also connect the sidewalk on the eastern side to the main Clear Acre sidewalk. We are gated, so that sidewalk along Clear Acre would be internal until you get to the gate, and then it would go external to the Clear Acre sidewalk. Definitely do that. It's an oversight on our part.
Okay, understood. I just wanted to, since we have the finding about the pedestrian connectivity, I just wanted to make sure we were looking internally as well as externally.
No, that's a good point. Very good point.
Okay, thank you for that, Dane. Madam Chair, those were the 2 questions because Commissioner Marshall already addressed the parking one, which was my third, so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Other questions from the commission? Discussion? Anybody ready and willing to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. Commissioner Marshall. Based upon the compliance with applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions in the matter of LDC 20-00065 Aspire multifamily.
Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second that but but I'm looking for maybe a little help with the condition about making sure there's internal connectivity included, pedestrian connectivity included between the buildings and the site amenities. So I guess I would request if Commissioner Marshall has any objections to that.
No objection.
So if, and Heather, I'll look for a nod or a head wave that you're able to craft something on that. And then if so, I will second.
Yes, you bet.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll do the roll call.
Okay,
vote.
second, I was gonna ask for any other discussion. Okay, Michelle?
Alrighty. John Marshall,
Yes.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
Thank you. 5-0.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you so much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, moving on to item 5.3, for possible action and recommendation to City Council, case number LDC 20000066, Mount Rose Transfer Station Zone Change. Michelle, do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Yes, just one moment, please.
Thank you.
Stephen, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you have 15 minutes to do your presentation. Do you have your presentation ready to go?
Yes. Do I have to do anything to share my screen?
There should be a button down at the bottom of your screen to share it. If you need help, I can
Oh, I
always
see.
bring up your presentation for you.
Nope, I have it. Thank you. Can everyone see my screen?
Not yet.
Not quite yet.
Or we can bring it up for you, Stephen, if you just want to tell us when to advance. Oh. Him.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm going to start the timer now, so you have 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Steve Mueller with Waste Management. I'm the Regional Engineering Manager and live here in Reno, and I just want to present one of our parcels of land in the zone, the rezoning that we're applying for. The subject parcel is down south of the city. It's near the intersection of Mount Rose and Virginia Avenue, near Interstate 580. And it's a parcel we've owned for 20 plus years, and it's located, it's about 1,200 feet off of Mount Rose Highway, and it's located right next to the big Ormat facility down there.
Is anybody else having a hard time? I hate to interrupt you, but I'm getting a lot of static. Does anybody else have that problem, or is it just me?
I am too. Yeah.
Michelle, is that on
How
our
about
end?
now?
It's not on our end. Steve, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you guys hear me better now?
Yeah.
That seems a little bit better.
All right, let me see if I can talk loud. My presentation's only about 2 minutes.
Thank you. Apologies for interrupting.
No problem. So there's our site down in the lower left-hand corner. It's located in between the large Ormat geothermal facility, and then to the left in the figure in this drawing is a large Nevada Energy substation. So currently, our current zoning on this area is mixed use Redfield Regional Center. And it's, you can see where the parcel's located in that zoning area, and everything adjacent to it around the, that would be the north and south and west ends have the same zoning. We're proposing to modify the zoning to industrial. And by doing so, basically bring it into compliance what's in the Imagine Reno master plan for the area. This particular parcel, along with the adjacent parcels, are envisioned to be zoned industrial. Basis for approval. So we're looking to go from mixed-use Redfield Regional to industrial. This would bring it into conformance with the current master plan. This would be consistent with the surrounding existing land uses and the Reimagine plan. We envision that ultimately this parcel, as well as the surrounding parcels, will ultimately be rezoned at some point to industrial as well. And it's basically an old former commercial industrial site, and it's compatible to the uses that we're looking at. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I thought I saw Brooke on here. Do you have a presentation for us?
Good evening, Planning Commission. Yes, I do. Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record.
You're probably going to have to speak up a little bit.
Michelle, if you can go ahead and pull up my presentation.
Just one moment. Okay.
Once again, Brooke Oswald, Associate Planner for the record. Next slide, please, Michelle. As was detailed a little bit, just the location of this, we do have Virginia Street to the east, Mount Rose to the north, and Interstate 580 to the west. So it's surrounded by major roadways on three sides of that. To the north section of that is the Ormat geothermal facilities. Many of you might remember the steamboat repower. There's several sites around this surrounding the subject site that are similar to that in scale. So the large cooling towers and a number of that. So we're seeing major industrial around to the north, and also a major substation to the west there. The parcel triangle parcel to the east is owned by the state. That is a portion that was a deal that was made with Ormat to mitigate for the steamboat buckwheat. Steamboat buckwheat is an endangered species that is in the area. The subject site has been disturbed previously in the past. Staff spoke with the state lands planner, and there were no concerns on the subject site that there would be any disturbance of this endangered species. Next slide, please. Slide, please. Excuse me. Just to reiterate, it is moving from the mixed-use Redfield Regional Center to industrial. The master plan land use designation currently is industrial. This was established with the Reimagine Reno. So the zoning is currently not in conformance with our master plan of industrial in that area. As is stated by the applicant, the request for this zoning is to facilitate the construction of a transfer station, a waste transfer station, that will then go to a landfill. Both a collection station for recyclables and a transfer station are allowed in that industrial zoning. Industrial zoning is the only zoning that does allow those uses, and they are permitted by right within that use. Once again, we are not looking at the specific use, we are looking at the appropriateness of the zoning in this site. Next slide, please. So as we look at this, it looks like an island of industrial in this mixed-use area. So when we look at the initial zoning, but as I stated before, we are anticipating an update with our master plan land use designation, an update with our renovation, the Title 18 update, we would anticipate that this area will be going largely to industrial to conform to that master plan land use designation. And on the next slide, we can take a look at that. Next slide, please, Michelle. So as we look at that, as noted on that subject parcel and the land, master plan land use designation, all that land has gone to industrial or is anticipated to be industrial, largely based on the existing uses of that large ORMAT geothermal facility and associated uses there. We do have two approximately 40-acre parcels within that are zoned open space. Those are associated with federally owned lands. In having worked previously out in this area, it has been noted that there's potentially sensitive environmental issues on those, probably related to the buckwheat, the endangered species of the steamboat buckwheat on those. Those would be maintained as open space. We wouldn't anticipate public access just because of the surrounding industrial sites in that, and it's more of a protective of a natural resource in that area. With that, staff can make all the applicable findings and recommends approval of the zoning amendments. I'm available for questions as needed.
Great, thank you, Brooke. Commissioners, disclosures, let's start someplace different. Commissioner Gower.
Mr. Gower, I have previously visited the site.
Commissioner Munoz.
No disclosures. I've also visited the site.
Commissioner Marshall.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Johnson.
No disclosures.
Commissioner Taylor, no disclosures. Michelle, this is a public hearing. Do we have any public comment, or have you entered any into the record?
I did not receive any public comment for this item.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for questions of either the applicant or staff.
I have a question for Brooke. Oh, other people want to go ahead?
Commissioner Munoz, please.
Arthur Munoz, real quick, just what is the property being used for right now?
I would, there's some industrial uses that have happened over the past, so from moving dirt to other items like that. The applicant probably could answer a little bit better. They do have ownership of that property and how they're currently using that property. Steve, if you'd like to answer that more thoroughly.
Yeah, right now it's just a very limited use. We do some minor bin storage, I believe, down there. But for the most part, it's been sitting idle for a number of years.
Thank you.
Commissioner Marshall?
Brooke, is the site, I know that the topography there is a little, there's a hill right there, so that from the Summit Mall, you can't see over into the ORMAT station. So what I couldn't figure out is whether or not you can view this site from 431 south of the Mountain Rose Highway, heading east or west, just that segment right there. So the property's off to the south there. Can you see this site?
You know, what you would probably notice before that is the large substation that sits directly to the west. There's a large substation there. So those properties to the north are still will be currently that mixed-use red field, and so we would anticipate potentially commercial development or something else happening there. There is a fair amount of grade change from the intersection of Virginia Street and Mount Rose Highway. So coming up that way, you have more of a hillside. This facility will all be in the interior, so you would see a building. We would have, obviously, would have to meet our industrial building standards and landscape standards. in that area. So as, you know, seeing it, yes, you may at this point, as future development happens and other things happen in that area, I think that will come to see if it is visible from Mount Rose Highway.
Thank you.
I wouldn't anticipate that it would impact any views or view corridors any more than the current geothermal facilities and large substation that are in that immediate vicinity.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other commissioners, other questions?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson. Question, Brooke, I noticed in the applicant's presentation, he had the old Redfield mixed use up there, which seemed to be subdivided into different categories already as a part of the former, I guess, master plan designation.
Correct. There's basically a sub-land use associated under that Redfield, that being associated with an industrial use on that. I think with the Reimagine Reno, what has been contemplated is to remove that and move that to our straight and industrial standards within that area.
Okay, so what we've got right now is, if I'm understanding it right, the original mixed use designation there, if we were to dig into the old handbook, would have had that as an industrial site, even though it was part of the mixed use. During the Reimagine Reno, that whole mixed use area just came in as mixed use, regardless of the underlying sub use for it. And that's why we're looking at the zone change now. And that's why Reno is considering going with a Title 18 change to the rest of that area to industrial. Did I capture that right?
Pretty much, yeah. I think it is reflective of the existing plan and the uses that have been established out there, either prior to annexation of that area, where we saw some of those geothermal plants coming in under county guidelines, or as we've gone into the Redfield industrial, that underlying industrial use in that area that's happened. So it's with Reimagine Reno, we've really just said, okay, we're seeing industrial uses, let's put it to that industrial category instead of having that sub-land use within the mixed use.
Okay. And then just to make sure, I believe I heard in your presentation, I just wanted to verify that the proposed use as stated by the applicant, although it's not part of this, the proposed use is allowed by right should it be changed to an industrial designation.
That is correct. Industrial is the only zoning designation that does allow a transfer station or a collection station, and within that industrial, those are allowed by right, which means they would be going directly to a building permit, would not have discretionary review,
Okay.
unless they triggered a cuts and fills or some other SUP, but it's not anticipated. There is no residential adjacency. We have quite a bit of distance in land between those residences. I can't think of anything else that would require a special use permit or any other oversight or review other than a building
I
permit.
guess that was my last question. So the mixed use that still remains between this parcel and the Mount Rose Highway potentially could be developed into multifamily, similar to what it was on the north side of Mount Rose Highway. But even under that scenario, you're saying it wouldn't trigger residential adjacency because the underlying zoning is not residentially zoned?
Yeah, the mixed use does not, within our mixed use, it does not trigger the residential adjacency with that mixed use. Now, we would look at residential adjacency standards and some of those things as we would move forward with that. But
okay, so the standards in terms of the development would be in place, but not any of the additional review or site plan review or special use permit process or any of that?
correct.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. That was my extent of my questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Brooke, I have a couple questions. And maybe I'm just old, but I'm having a hard time hearing you, so I might ask you to just yell at me. I will not be offended when you're responding. So my first question is, in your presentation, you talked about the steamboat buckwheat, and in the presentation or in the staff report, it says that no comments were received from governing agencies, but then on page 2, it says that the agencies that we reached out to were, DNR was not included in one of those. It was Air Quality Management, City of Reno, Environmental Control Offices. So I just wanted to clarify that you or staff did reach out to DNR and they don't have any comments on the steamboat buckwheat with this zoning change.
Yes, I actually spoke with a representative from their office today just to confirm that, that we didn't get comment back. They did contact us, related that they do have property in the area and were noticed on that. I spoke with them for a short period of time just about their adjacent property, critical habitat within that, but they did not anticipate this site having any impacts on any natural resources or anything, and didn't anticipate that steamboat buckwheat would be located within this site.
Okay, great. And then my other question is, was this noticed to surrounding stakeholders, and if so, was the 750 feet used to notice?
That's correct. The site was posted and it was noticed to be required 750 feet from the project site.
Okay, so then when I look again at the staff report, it looks like the closest homes would be about 3/4 of a mile away. Is that accurate?
I can do a quick map here. I'm trying to remember exactly what those were.
The reason why I'm asking is it seems like there's within the 750-foot radius of this project. I don't think, would any of the neighborhoods get notices?
We wouldn't. The closest project is the new multifamily development that's going into the north there. That is over 1,000 feet located across Mount Rose Highway. As we looked at this, that appropriateness of that industrial zoning too, that was one of the considerations we have. We're seeing large roadways or other natural features. We have the large steamboat corridor that runs down through that provides a lot of buffering to neighboring residences and houses. And so that was one of the considerations. We looked at the appropriateness of the industrial zoning in this area. So
I guess the neighborhoods up Mount Rose Highway, that would be west. None of those neighborhoods would have been within that 750 foot.
My records are indicating right now that's probably about 2,800 feet from the project site. The closest being the new development to the north is approximately 1,000 feet from the site.
Okay. Thanks, Brooke.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, commissioners? Discussion?
If I might, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Marshall?
So I'm having some conceptual problems with the identified end use. And I know that that's not necessarily a consideration when we're shifting to zoning, but it troubles me that this would be a as of right, without a public hearing, approval of a transfer station. Given that I've spent too much time in the transfer station near my house, I wouldn't necessarily want, I'm not certain about the fitness of the location for one. And if we approve the zoning, then we're essentially approving the transfer station without a public hearing. And that to me is problematic. Now they could have come in and not said what they're going to use it for, and you know, I'm not certain if I would have had those objections, because it seems relatively consistent with surrounding land uses for industrial. which kind of leads me maybe to my main point, which is I think we should consider this zone request when we're doing the Chapter 18 update. Because then we can look at the area, and if we need to make certain adjustments regarding, you know, if in fact there's a more appropriate zoning or land use classification, that, you know, I'd be interested in kind of taking a look at the area in general rather than doing this one-off, which could lead to the possibility of a transfer station. So that's a bit of my conundrum with my thinking right now. So I'd love to hear thoughts of other commissioners. Thanks.
Other commissioners, thoughts?
Go ahead, Commissioner Gower. All right, Madam Chair, I guess, Commissioner Johnson, it's an interesting point, Commissioner Marshall. I know it's part of the reason why I was trying to understand how we got to this point and what we would have moving forward, and I appreciated the answers that Brooke gave. As we've said before, I don't like, if I'm hearing that this is something that could potentially be wrapped up into the ongoing Title 18 work, I'm not a big fan of carving it out. That said, even with the use that's proposed, I believe that, you know, we're looking at a site that's basically between an electrical substation and a geothermal plant. So the other uses that would be there, it's going to be some type of industrial use. So even rolling this into a consideration at the Title 18 level, I'm not so sure that we would be looking at this parcel any differently. I agree, it's, you know, now understanding what it is that is proposed is certainly part of the discussion, but I guess that would also be part of the discussion just looking at the ownership of the parcel, because obviously, you know, Waste Management has a limited number of things that they're going to put onto a parcel, and this is not where they're going to put their office buildings. So I appreciate the thought, and I certainly am in favor of having these not done as one-by-one items, but just having looked at everything that's presented, I'm just not sure that I would see that my conclusion would come to anything different. So that's really where my thoughts are on this one.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Commissioner Gower, did you have a thought or two?
It's hard to string two thoughts together, but no, I think Commissioner Johnson summed up my thoughts pretty succinctly. So I'll just kind of echo what he said. Thanks.
You know, I guess I really struggle with this because we do know what the project is. When we look at zoning, we're not really looking at a project or approving a project. In the when we looked at what we had on 5 point, you know, at the beginning, we had zoning and then we had a project. And this one we have just the zoning, but the project was kind of wiggled in there. I'm concerned about finding M because of the neighborhoods, but the applicant did what was required of them in the noticing of the 750 feet. Unfortunately, I don't think that notice reached anybody in a neighborhood. I fear that this project is going to move forward and there's going to be community members, residences, neighborhoods that are going to be upset with us that said that they never knew this was coming. Unfortunately, again, the applicant did what was supposed to be done. The NABs aren't meeting, and we've run into this before, and I think we're going to talk about it a little bit later tonight. So I feel like our hands are a little bit tied on this. And I wish the use was not put in the staff report, but it is, and you know, it's an industrial use, and like Commissioner Johnson said, it's permitted by right, and, they're playing within the guidelines that we've given them. So those are my thoughts. And with that, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, can I digress to questions and ask Brooke a quick question, if he remembers?
Sure.
Brooke, what was the trigger for the steamboat power plant for, I know we saw that as a variance, but wasn't there an SUP associated with that too? What was the trigger for that?
That was cuts and fills. They cut back into that hillside within that, so we had a SUP for cuts and fills, and then the variance for the landscape on that.
So that would have been the same scenario. That would have been a by right scenario if there were no cut and fills and they didn't ask for the variance.
If I remember right, it's been a while, but I believe, yeah, without the cuts and fills, and if they wouldn't ask for the variance, they would have been able to move forward with the power generation within that area.
Okay.
You know, it should be noted, if I'm able to speak, you know, we're looking at one transfer station currently within the city that's down by the courtyard of the city over on Sutro Street, or located around Sutro and Commercial Row. As was stated in the applicant's information, what they are really looking to do is to establish one, as we're seeing growth, so much growth to the south. Their efficiency and their ability, sustainability, really, of driving trucks back and forth to those transfer stations and everything, they see this as a necessary for that growth that we're seeing to the south, to be able to get that solid waste to a collection station and then get it off to the landfill, then, instead of trying to drive it downtown through the downtown area, or going further out north to deposit it. And so it's one of those unfortunate evils that you know, we do see. It should be noted also that that facility downtown is in close proximity to many commercial buildings and residential buildings, you know, being within, you know, under that 1,000 feet that we're seeing at this current site.
Thank you, Brooke. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I am prepared to make a motion. I just wanted to respond to your comment about the neighborhoods, because I think it's a good comment whenever we're dealing with an industrial use. I think, however, the reason that I can make the findings that are here is that the residential uses that we're seeing are either on the other side of I-580, so there's a natural barrier there, or on the other side of Virginia Street, which, from a circulation standpoint, yes, there's going to be added, you know, any type of development is going to add circulation in this area, but I think there's a number of both natural and man-made features that are kind of isolating this area between three major roadways and really limiting the impact that it would have on the potential for residential development. So that's how I was able to sort of wrap my head around that finding. So with that said, for case number LDC 20-00066, Melrose Transfer Station zone change, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance, and I can make all of the findings.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Gower, I'll second. And Madam Chair, if I could just say that I appreciate Brooke's comments about the, you know, the operational aspect for waste management, and how this facility, again, we're not looking at the facility, but the zone change would facilitate that increase in efficiency in the operations. And I think that's an important point that kind of goes along with this, that was missed earlier in the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Michelle, can you please take the vote?
Yes. John Marshall,
No.
Peter Gower,
Yes.
Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
Oh, it's 4-1.
Motion carries. Good luck with your city council recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Moving on to item 5.4, case number LDC 20000069, 711 Rock and Longley. A request has been made for a special use permit. Michelle, do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Yes, we have John Krompatek on the line. John, can you hear us? John, are you there? John, I think you're muted.
If we weren't on the record, I'd say John is our problem child.
John?
Can I give his presentation?
No.
Only in practice mode, John.
Maybe we could take a quick break and I can give him a call. Would that be okay?
Sounds good. 5 minutes?
Yes, thank you.
Right on time, Commissioner Johnson.
Not enough time to eat, so I just grabbed a cookie.
That's dinner.
Well, you know, dessert first.
So it looks like Commissioner Gower does not have a video. Are you around?
I'm here. I was trying to sneak in some dinner too.
We see ya.
All right.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started again. Looks like we have a presentation.
No, hang on. We're still, oh, can she hear me? We're still working on.
We can hear you.
Yeah, but, John, we still don't have audio from John. Let's just try it with the.
Okay, Michelle, you let us know when you're ready.
I will, just a moment. Okay, Madam Chair, I think we're ready to start, but we're going to do it a little bit differently since John does not have audio. I'm just going to put the microphone down to my phone here and he can hopefully do his presentation this way. He has control of the screen, so go ahead, John.
Can you hear me okay now? Madam Chair?
This is gonna get.
Boy, I'm telling you, this is incredibly awkward. I can't hear you now, but I guess you guys can hear me. Let's go through the PowerPoint, see if we can make this work. I did see, I can see your guys' faces. I can see the people that are part of the applicant team. Lance Falstick is on the Zoom video. Paul Salegi. I'm not sure that I did not see Justin Farley, but he is allegedly on as well. John Krumpatek with KLS Planning on behalf of the applicant. You know, I'm going to skip a few slides because really the biggest issue that's come to the forefront in the last couple of days, I submitted to you, to staff yesterday, the 2 voluntary conditions as a result of our outreach to the neighborhood. You know, it's, we went to, you can see on this screen here, you look at the proposed 7-11 building, there are 5 buildings that's actually 10 units that are adjacent to the property. At some point, you know, the impact dissipates, obviously. So what we did is contacted, can you see my cursor okay? Hovering over the building, okay. That building, this one, this one, this one, this one, and then we met with Mr. Van Pelt, who's a couple of more buildings down the way. And this was yesterday. And so there's two things that came from these meetings with the neighbors. One was the gentleman who lives right here said, would you please put something in the record, presumably a condition, that would have a little bit of teeth to it that restricts people from loitering and gathering, is what he called it. Had no problem with the site design and all the stuff we've dealt with in design to address the adjacency issue. And then Mr. Van Pelt, who you've got a letter from, Kyle has spoken with as well. We met with yesterday, that is Lance Fulsick and I. He's the owner and developer. And he had a concern about the loitering as well. And so And then he also mentioned the loading zone, and I explained to him the location of it is as far away as we could get from residential. And we added that condition to limit loading from 10 p.m. or restrict it from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That would be prohibited in those hours. So that was kind of all of we heard. And you guys, if you got any more emails that I don't have access to or are privy to, then so be it. But that was the direct outreach of these properties adjacent to the site. Just wanted to let the commission know that, and submitted up to staff. Staff, I guess I'm sure the memo with you guys. So in terms of site design, you know, the other stuff that we would expect in adjacency, you see the evergreen screen, the separation of the building, the 1-story cap, we have 28-foot separation, no activity in the back of the building. Lighting is down to 1 security light on the north side of the building. The signs, we had a sign on this elevation of the canopy that has been removed. So there's no orientation of signing from those residences to the canopy or to the building. I know that noise has been a concern from staff and obviously because of residential adjacency, but if you looked closely at our noise study, Dario points out the ambient noise sources are the greatest source of noise to this site, more than people come and going to a gas canopy and to the convenience store. And one is, of course, being adjacent to an arterial street with big traffic numbers. The other is the airport flight path overlay that's within 150 feet of the site, east-west axis of the runway. So there's kind of the summary of the design approach. The noise I touched on, the screening with the fence and the wall, we do have more than a 6-foot fence because you have a wall, then a 6-foot fence on top of it with the evergreen trees. The lighting I mentioned was reduced. Lighting is really easy to manage nowadays with the LED technology that we deal with. We do have 12-foot height standards, light standards that are very much containing the site, the light to the site. Building height of 21 feet with accents up to 27 feet. Code allows 40, so it's single story. It's the best we could expect here. And then I mentioned the setbacks being 22 feet required, and we have a 28 foot. We pushed it as much as we could away from the residences. So with that, I think I will just turn it over to the commission for any questions for our team on any of the technical issues. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Do we have a presentation from Kyle? Kyle, we can't hear you, or I can't hear you.
Sorry about that.
Do you need Michelle's phone too?
No. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Kyle Chisholm, Assistant Planner for the record. I do have a presentation. Everybody seeing that? I tried to do kind of the presentation view of this, and it took up both my screens, and then I couldn't see anybody or anything. So sorry about that. So I'll just leave it on this view. So as John mentioned, you have a 1.25 acre site located on northeast corner of Rock and Longley, 2 arterial streets. This is a request for SUP for a convenience store use in the IC zoning district. And I did put a little bullet on there as you, so you can see that gas station isn't allowed use by right in IC. It's really the convenience store use that requires the SUP, and then also 24-hour operations. kind of a bird's eye view of the property, shows you kind of the airport vicinity, McCarran, you see McCarran there, kind of bisects the picture. And then this is a zoning map of the area. You can see there's PF zone property to the east, more IC to the, PF to the west, more IC to the east. Mixed use to the south, and the SPD, which is a residential SPD, to the north, and that's where the residential adjacency is. Site plan, proposed site plan, excuse me. So you see the building here in gray, that's a proposed convenience store, the gas pump islands. There's two accesses proposed, one off Longley Lane here, which is a new driveway access, and then an existing shared access off the adjacent parcel just to the east. Off of Rock. All the, from what was proposed, all the parking is based on ITE parking generation numbers, and because I kind of noted in the staff report, because the fact that Reno Municipal Code doesn't currently have a combined convenience store gas station parking rate, I felt that the ITE convenience store gas station rate was much more appropriate. It kind of takes both uses into consideration and kind of the overall dynamic here. So staff thought that that was acceptable. The landscape plan here, you can see the entire front yard setback, so to speak, front yard area is fully landscaped with street trees, with the exception of this little corner area, which is needs to be open to maintain adequate vision. I'm sure Paul would concur with that. And then the landscape area to the rear, so this is kind of the meat of what we're looking at here. With regards to the residential adjacency, the applicants proposed a wall along the northern boundary, large evergreen trees placed a minimum of every 30 feet on center along this area, which will provide a substantial buffer between the residences and the building. And then I just want to point out that most of the activity is going to be happening kind of south of the building here. With the conditions that John mentioned, the ADA conditions in the memo that was sent to you earlier, and staff worked with the applicant representative on those conditions, was to put signs on all four sides of the building for loitering. And I thought that was a good idea, just because this is kind of a unused area back there. I think it's fair to notify the public that loitering is not allowed, and also to help prevent that. There is minimal lighting back here because of the residential adjacency, and the residential adjacency standards require just a half-foot candle of light at the residential property line, which you kind of walk a fine line between safety and security and kind of protecting the residences. So it's really the minimum amount of light needed for security. But this is a residential adjacency SUP, it has to meet code, and that's what they've shown and demonstrated. Here's a building elevation. This is the top elevation there on your screen is the north side of the building. That's the side that's facing the residences. You can see there's no entrances, no windows, and kind of minimizes activity on that side. And then the primary entrance would be on the bottom part of your screen there. Typical of what a 7-Eleven looks like. Has a good amount of architecture for the size of the building. And then really in reviewing this application, staff looked at all the impacts to neighboring residences as with this request and the 24 hours. And really, the applicant was able to demonstrate that noise was being mitigated, lighting was being mitigated, landscaping and screening was adequate, and that traffic and circulation issues were consistent with code and really designed well for the site. I also want to point out they voluntarily provided a loading zone. I'll just kind of go back. I skipped over that. Let me just go back real quick. They provided a loading zone kind of on this side of the site, and it was kind of a workaround. I raised some concerns kind of about having loading trucks coming on the east side of the building here, which would be a lot closer to the residences. And, you know, they have very loud doors in my experience when they open and close them. And so this was kind of a mitigation measure for that, and to have those loading activities occurring away from the residences. So that's important. And then I just wanted to note that the conceptual signage that proposed, and I mentioned this in the staff report, I just want to put it on the record that it, at least current code standards, that the number of signs proposed exceeded code allowances. And so just wanted to state that no variance is associated with this request, and that prior to issuance of a permit, those signs will need to meet code for the zone. Staff did receive 2 public comments opposed and 1 neutral to this request. And I was able to make all the applicable findings and recommend that the Planning Commission approve the project subject to the conditions listed in the staff report and with the added 2 conditions proposed by the applicant. And I am available for any questions you may have.
Thanks, Kyle. Commissioners' disclosures. Let's start with Commissioner Johnson.
Commissioner Johnson, I visited the site, received and read the public comment, and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Marshall?
Can't you hear my disclosures? I'm barking them to you. Read emails, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Gower?
Commissioner Gower read and received and read emails, visited the site, and spoke with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Munoz?
Same.
Commissioner Taylor, as did I. Okay, Michelle, this is a public hearing. Do we have any request to speak forms or public comment?
No, we did not receive any more public comment for this item.
Michelle, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Oh, that's because I was muted. We did not receive any more public comment. I wasn't muted. IT muted me.
IT made my dogs bark too. I'm just gonna blame it on them. Okay, thank you. We will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for questions of either the applicant or staff.
Madam Chair, I've got a few questions.
Commissioner Gower?
For John or for Kyle, for the proposal to add a 6-foot sound wall on the north side of the property, can you talk to me a little bit about what that looks like and how that works with the existing? I'm looking at the photo right now on my computer. It's a 4-foot concrete wall with a fence on top of it. What's the interface going to be with that that existing fence?
I can address that. So yeah, that John and I talked at length about that. And really what it comes down to is code requires a 6-foot wall on that northern boundary. There's as you said, a 4-foot wall, masonry wall there now. And the height requirement is a 6-foot wall. And so or whatever the administrator determines is necessary to adequately screen the site. At minimum would need a 6-foot wall. If I've mentioned this in other projects previously, but there is an ability to deviate from that through a minor deviation process as well. And so they, essentially the way I look at it is they would need to add some height to that wall or add another 6-foot wall on their side of the property. That answer your question?
It does. So the advantage and the code requirement for the 6-foot masonry wall is for sound attenuation?
Yeah, I think my take is sound, light, any other type of impacts that, you know, that can mitigate. But I think you're right. I think mostly for noise, I would agree with that.
Okay. My next question relates to the landscaping, and John, maybe you can answer this relative to the proposed evergreen trees there on the north side. You know, what kind of species are we looking at? And in the presentation, it was mentioned that they would be large, but you know, particularly in the near term until these achieve a more mature growth status. I mean, what kind of height are we talking about here?
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. So, when we spoke earlier, I did touch base with our landscape architect to kind of look at this, given that, you know, you expressed some concern, and then, I mean, obviously, at those, you know, shared property line with residential. So what we talked about was maybe having the flexibility on plant selection with evergreens rather than dictating something like Leland cypress would be most appropriate, because there's trees, you know, there's several types of evergreen trees that do really well in this climate. But what we discussed, and be glad to volunteer another condition here, to be a little more aggressive on instant screening, is maybe a double row of evergreens and then do all at 10-foot height. And you know, that's kind of, we've met the code as the code is, but that would mean a 50% increase in quantity, and then everything at 10-foot height, and have a pretty doggone dense screen. I'd like to share an image with you that kind of illustrates what, can you all see that? Can you all see that image?
Yes.
So this is, the idea here is, you know, this is DeAndre at Safeway. You've got a you know, sort of, you got a drive-through between the building and the residential, but the idea here is to show a screen adjacent to the single family, something like that, all evergreens, a little bit more dense spacing, and you get pretty good screening in a view like that. That's going on. So that's what we discussed.
Commissioner Gower, do you mind if I kind of just provide one point of clarification? The minimum size for to answer your question, the minimum size for evergreens is 10 feet for large evergreens, and that's what's proposed on the plan. So that's what is going to be required. I would be hesitant to require a double row of trees, evergreens, large evergreens there, only because it's not a very huge area and it just might not function. I would, if anything, consistent with that image that John just brought up, we use that image a lot because it's a very good example of landscape screening. And you can space them about 15 feet apart at most when they get to full maturity, as you see how dense those are there. Otherwise, they become a maintenance nightmare, and they die and it doesn't suit the need. And so I just wanted to state that.
I appreciate that feedback, and I'll, I guess, reserve any discussion on that for later, or if other commissioners have a follow-up. But I did want to just ask one more question relative to that north area. And Kyle, you brought it up in your presentation, and I thought you explained it really well. It's the fine balance between wanting to provide the, you know, the attenuation of the noise and the lighting impacts for the neighbors adjacent to this use, and being able to, you know, avoid loitering and potential impacts. So I guess my question relative to that is, you know, on the site plan, it, you know, it just looks like a standard turf area, but are there, you know, surface applications that could be applied that would essentially deter, you know, situations where there might be encampments or something like that? I know that John offered up the condition, but is there something more specifically that we can include so we have that, you know, assurance of the, you know, that anti-loitering application right in with the proposal here?
Boy, that's a toughie. You know, it's turf. Certainly, to me, and my take would be that turf is, I agree with you. I think turf would probably be the most appealing for somebody to hang out on and camp and loiter. So you could do some sort of, I don't know, some sort of other type of ground cover, like you know, 3-inch river rock or something. People aren't going to be laying around, standing around on that. So you know, that certainly would, to me, provide a better deterrent, so to speak, for what you're talking about. And John, feel free to chime in on, I guess, on at the commission's discretion, your thoughts on that, I guess.
John, we can't hear you if you're talking.
Commissioner Gower, did I answer your question? Do you need John to step in and answer? Or?
You did, and I wasn't expecting, you know, to design the landscaping. I was just curious if you, Kyle or John, had any, you know, suggestions, or, you know, if there were any concerns on your part related to that. And I kind of have in my mind a vision of, you know, essentially rockery bioswales, you know, that kind of break up that flat turf surface. But again, I'll save that for discussion. I do have another question, Madam Chair, related to traffic, but I think I should pause there and let other commissioners jump in at this point.
Okay, other commissioners, questions? I can't see anybody. Let's see here. Through my screen, because all I see is the presentation. Commissioner Munoz, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a quick question and a comment. I have the same, I'm wondering the same thing actually, with no access to the back of the building, and very minimal light, or the minimal light that's required. It seems like that's going to be the perfect place for people to hang out, when one of the main concerns of the residents, or the opposition that we did hear, was for loitering. That was definitely one of the things. And so by not wanting any noise or anything coming from the back of the building, and completely blocking that off, no windows, no doors, no access, no anything, it just seems like you're inviting people to hang out back there, and exactly what they're looking for. So I just wonder if you could just address that, John, a little further, how you guys can mitigate that and make sure that that doesn't happen.
I'm having a difficult time hearing. That was directed at me. Is that right, Commissioner Munoz? About the loitering issue?
Yes. Yes.
brought it up in a different context. When I talked to the two gentlemen that expressed concern about this, it was more about, you know, if you think about, I mean, I did it back in the day, juveniles hanging out at a convenience store parking lot and showing off your car. So, you know what I mean? It was more about flooding the parking lot, hanging out, and whatever noise generation and disruption that causes. So that was the basis of us crafting that new condition. And again, it came from, that was the only concern that came from any and all of the neighbors, other than the restriction on the loading zone. So I think in terms of, I just don't see any reason for people to be hanging out between the building and the fence line there, especially with planting. I mean, there's just nothing to draw, you know, any activity. It's a screened off area. And I think just with the design we have and the landscape and the trees in there, it kind of just put people away. That would be my thought. But, you know, human behavior is always difficult to predict, isn't it? You know?
Thank you, John. Can I ask a question, Kyle? So there's a quick stop, I think like 2 doors down. Does Reno Direct get a lot of comments, questions, concerns on loitering? Do you know if that's a problem?
There have been complaints in the past on that. I don't know. I don't want to speak to too much detail or how many, but I do know that there have been code enforcement complaints on that property. And I don't know, again, I don't know if it was specifically for the quick stop or, because there's a variety of other businesses in that little center. So I don't know if it was exactly for quick stop or just the whole site in general. So I don't know, unfortunately. I don't have that information in front of me.
Okay, thanks. I was just curious. Commissioner Goward, did you have a question on traffic?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do, and it relates to the potential left turn movement coming out of the proposed project site onto Rock Boulevard, and what type of mitigation would be provided to, you know, essentially avoid that movement. And if that movement is not, you know, prohibited, you know, it seems like there's a level of concern for making that left turn.
Is that addressed to Paul?
I think so.
Okay, I'm ready to discuss it. In terms of that Rock Boulevard driveway, the driveway is shown to function at level of service B and C. So the driveway functions with minimal delay. And we also reviewed the need for turn lanes there, and the turn lanes are not required. So our opinion was that operation is sufficient without further controls, and we met policy levels of service and without mitigation. What did you have in mind?
Well, you're the traffic engineer, Paul, so I'm just expressing my concern that you've got the potential for a left turn movement coming out across a 2-lane roadway where you've got on the westbound lane a leftbound turn lane, the start of a leftbound turn lane onto Longley. So how are you proposing to mitigate essentially traffic crossing 3 lanes of traffic, the 2 westbound travel lanes and the start of a westbound turn lane onto South Longley? Because that's a concerning movement for a free, just a free movement.
Well, and I guess the specific volumes there, the volumes on Rock Boulevard are such that we can accommodate with B and level of service B and C operation, which indicates minimal delay and minimal congestion. And in terms of also that adjacent Rock Longley intersection, it was operating at level of service, at policy level of service throughout the study years out to 2040. So there wasn't sufficient congestion or delay that would trigger the need because of where the driveway was positioned and how the queuing was working. There was not a need to separate or prohibit movements there. It was our opinion based on our analysis.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions? Moving on to
Commissioner Johnson.
Oh, sorry, Commissioner Johnson?
I had to find the unmute button quickly. I guess there was one comment that came up in public, I guess in the public comment that I found interesting, and maybe John can address it, with respect to maybe the suitability of a quick stop, a mini mart and gas station, essentially in almost direct proximity to another use that's very similar to that. And in looking at, questioning from public comment as to why that's something that's necessary, and I'm specifically asking that with respect to finding A, talking about, being compatible with existing surrounding land uses and development. Obviously, it is a surrounding land use and development already, but I guess the idea of doing something very similar within essentially the same block. I think I phrased that in the form of a question at some point in there.
Is that a question for John or?
John, yeah.
Okay.
Was that directed at me? I'm sorry.
Yes, John, I'm basically just trying to look at the issue of essentially doing a proposed use here that is extremely similar to an existing use within the same block.
You're talking about a market issue, right? Why are we doing this proximity issue? If you know these fast food and convenience store retailers, they do market analysis, they look at their service radius, they look at traffic volumes are key because a lot of their business is not destination, it's pass by or diverted trips. And they see this as a winner site. They're making the investment, and so just fair competition. If it was a subdivision next to another subdivision, this question doesn't come up. But when it's convenience stores or coffee houses, it's funny how it tends to draw more attention to that market issue. I don't know. What else do you do with a site on a signalized intersection at where two arterial streets meet? That's zoned for commercial use. And it's square, it's flat, it's the kind of use that draws interest from convenience store and gas services. And yes, it would be a competition 200 feet away from the other one. But competition's good in my view.
Okay. Thank you, John. That answered that question. And I think I'll reserve the rest of my stuff for discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Commissioner Johnson. Want to start us off with discussion?
I knew that was going to happen.
Ask for it.
I guess I want to touch back, since I wasn't, the question of landscape and the north side of the building is, it's an interesting discussion, and I guess we kind of took it in a number of different directions. And the first question I have is how enforceable that added condition is. I mean, it's one thing to require signage on there to state that there's no loitering. It's even a nice thing to say that we're putting together a plan that the applicant has for how they're going to deal with loitering. But when it comes down to it, it's going to become an issue of code enforcement from our end. I appreciated the question about, if there's any issues on the parcel to the east. In looking at that, there's actually multiple uses, and the restaurant uses appears to be closer to the residential area. So the space behind there is even narrower than the one we're looking at here. So I question whether that's an enforceable condition as it's written. I do share concern about having essentially a dark area back there, but looking at the site plan, that whole area is open to the west where the road is at. So there's visual access into that area by drive-by traffic. So some of the concerns about that being a place of encampment or hangout, I think, are somewhat alleviated by the fact that it's not a very private space. So I don't have those concerns as much, but I definitely am concerned about putting that condition on there. It seems to me to be something that, after we put a 6-foot tall wall and a bunch of trees, the idea of somebody loitering there and actually having that be problematic for the neighbors, I think that's somewhat diminished as a concern. And then I guess just going back to the question that I asked John, I certainly understand competition. I've been a number of places, we all have, where there's gas stations on 2, 3, or 4 corners of the same intersection. But I guess the question that I have is really looking at our findings in terms of, the compatibility of that. And if this stretch of road along Rock kind of qualifies as one of those areas where we would feel that that's appropriate for that level of development. I'm not going to question the market analysis or anything of that. I'm purely looking at it from a finding standpoint that we have from Planning Commission. So those are the thoughts that are going through my head. I think that the project itself has done a good job of attempting to mitigate the concerns in the residential adjacency. I just think that we've brought up a couple of good points that bear discussion. So since I get to go first, I don't actually have to have any answers. I just get to throw everything out there and open it up to the rest of you. So, Madam Chair, thank you for letting me get it started, and I'm just going to sit back and listen now.
Thanks for getting us started. Other commissioners, discussion?
Madam Chair, I'll continue discussion. I appreciate Commissioner Johnson's comments, but I do disagree a little bit in the sense that while that area opens up to the west, there in the rear of the building, I don't think that the activity on that side of the property is such that it would be a deterrent to loitering and potential encampments. I do feel that some additional assurances in terms of design are required, not just signs that say no loitering, but physical design to deter the encampments back there, or the potential for. So that's I think that's a real concern, because there will not be any sort of eyes on that area from the north side or from the property. And the traffic piece related to finding D is really concerning. I know what Paul's saying. He looked at the level of service, and that's great. I'm looking at 2 lanes of traffic, a turn lane, and essentially a right turn coming off of Longley to the north there onto Rock. So a person making a left turn movement out of the property has to negotiate 2 lanes of westbound traffic, a left turn lane onto Longley, and traffic potentially coming around a blind corner northbound on Longley. So what I would be looking for, frankly, is a no left turn sign coming out of the property, to force the traffic to exit onto Longley. If the person wants to make, wants to travel east on Rock, then they would have to go to Longley, make a left turn at the stoplight.
Thank you, Commissioner Gower. Other discussion? So I guess I will chime in just for a couple seconds. The fact that there is a quick stop 2 or 3 places to the east or, buildings, that is, for me, it helps me make the compatibility finding. And in regards to traffic, and I've said this many times before, I personally am not an engineer. I'm not a professional engineer. I don't do civil engineering. And the applicant has a professional engineer here who did the analysis and did the work and has said that the left turn is not a concern. So I feel that that is sufficient for any concerns that I would have. And as a driver, if I'm leaving a 7-Eleven and I don't feel like I can make that left-hand turn, then on my own, I can just go ahead and make a right turn. I don't need a sign to tell me that. I understand and I appreciate the concerns that have been made, but when we have a professional engineer here telling us that it's not a concern based on the traffic levels on Rock and Longley, I tend to agree with that. And staff, I guess, Kyle, do you have any concerns on the traffic with that left turn movement? I can see you laughing at me.
I'm not laughing. I'm sorry. I'm looking at it. No, I have to echo what you just said, Madam Chair, that I am not a traffic engineer, and Mr. Salegi is a professional traffic engineer and has done the analysis and deems that those turn movements are acceptable and that it's not creating an unsafe situation. And so I am comfortable with it.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, commissioners?
Commissioner Munoz, real quick. I still do have a little bit of concern with the north side of the building, and I know John touched on traffic going by and being able to see down on the north side of the building. But we're talking about, in the beginning of the discussion or the beginning of the presentation, possibly putting in 2 rows of trees blocking any view off from the houses behind or to the north. That's really, when you have a problem or a complaint with people loitering, that's where that complaint's going to go from. And if you're blocking their view off completely and giving them where you can't see anything, I just think that's the wrong way to go. I think really you want to use people that live in the area that are going to see problems, see something that's not right or different, to bring it to the attention of the store, of the city, of the police department or law enforcement, to let them know, hey, there is a problem there. We are seeing a problem, it needs to be addressed. But by hiding it with more trees and giving people more places and more cover to hide out, I think loitering outside of what John was talking about could definitely be a problem. So I want to put that objection there. I don't think more trees and hiding the area is a good suggestion.
Thank you, Commissioner Munoz. Other discussion, comments? Motion? Well, this is a first.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
I'll take it.
In the case of LDC 20-00069711 Rock and Longley, based on non-compliance with the applicable findings, I move to deny the special use permit. I cannot make findings D or F.
There is a motion. Is there a second? Okay, I do not have a second. So Angela, I'm going to need some help here. Do we have, does it fail?
So the motion failed because there was no second. If somebody else would like to make another motion, a different motion, then you have that option as well.
Okay, commissioners, would somebody like to make a different motion?
I'll make a motion, Commissioner Munoz. I may need some help with the wording here, but on the case of LDC 200069, I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion.
I'd like to second that motion, but with a amendment, if acceptable to Commissioner Munoz, which would be to impose a condition to add landscape features on the north side of the building to render inhospitable to loitering the space between the adjacent residential and the convenience store building.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Can I seek some clarification on?
Sorry.
Can I get some clarification on the motion? I'm sorry. So in that condition, Commissioner, do you want it to be to the satisfaction of community development that the landscape features deter, or do you have something specific in mind, or?
I think you guys can work it out. You had some good suggestions, large rock, you know, or there was, Commissioner Gower also talked about undulating topography or other things that,
and then just,
you know, just if,
are we including the two conditions that the applicant has proposed?
the motion did not include it, but I think there was one condition that Commissioner Johnson did not feel was particularly enforceable. And I'm sorry, the other condition, I forgot what had to do with hours of operation. Is that right, Angela?
Yeah, could we pull up the conditions so that everyone can see the conditions one more time? The two additional ones, do we have those on a PowerPoint slide?
I'm working on it, sorry. I gotta switch screen.
I think we already have it up. Kyle, is this it?
Can you go back on the condition?
That's my PowerPoint. Angela was talking about the memo that went out, that was included. Do you have that, Michelle?
I'll bring it up just one
I
moment.
can pull it up.
I have the memo if you want me to share my screen.
Kathleen, could you, or Madam Chair, could you share your screen, please?
Now it's my turn. Can you see it?
We can. So for those
Yes,
of you
so-
that can't read the screen, condition number 6 is loading zone and deliveries shall be prohibited between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., and that's 7 days per week. And condition number 7 is loitering shall be prohibited on the site premises. Prior to the issuance of a business license, the applicant shall submit a security plan detailing how loitering prohibitions will be enforced by the current business owner and shall provide signage on all 4 sides of the building notifying the public of such procedures.
Commissioner Munoz, would you accept those 2 conditions in addition to the other conditions?
Yes, I do.
That would be the motion then?
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Kyle, are you good? You can just give me a thumbs up. Okay. Okay, Michelle, can you, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Quick discussion, since I was the one that brought up the issue with the second condition there. I was merely bringing it up with concerns as to its enforceability. I can appreciate the fact that it was a voluntary condition and was put together with the input from the affected neighbors. So I don't have any issues with that as it was presented. So I just wanted to clarify that I think the condition is fine. It becomes an enforcement issue after that.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I think we're ready for a roll call vote.
Okay. John Marshall,
Yes.
Peter Gower.
Oh.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
No, I cannot make finding D.
Thank you. Mark Johnson,
Yes.
Arthur Munoz,
Yes.
Kathleen Taylor.
Yes.
So we have a vote of 4-1.
Okay, motion passes. Good luck with your project. Okay, I think all the background noise is gone. We are on to agenda item number 6. Discussion and possible action to appoint one planning commissioner to the Regional Road Impact Fee Technical Advisory Committee from the following list of commissioners in alphabetical order: Commissioner Gower, Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Marshall, Commissioner Munoz, Commissioner Olivas, Commissioner Taylor, or Commissioner Velto. I had a conversation with Commissioner Velto, and he was interested in the position. But I'd like to have some discussion with the commission.
I may ask a question, and maybe you all did it at the last meeting that I missed, but was there a replacement for Ed on the regional planning? I forget the name of the acronym.
Regional Planning Commission.
Yeah.
So Ed is was not currently sitting on Regional Planning Commission.
Oh, he was not. Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Johnson, if Commissioner Velto expressed an interest, and especially since he's not here, I would move to nominate Commissioner Velto for the position on the Regional Road Impact Fee Technical Advisory Committee.
Second.
I like your style, Commissioner Johnson. We have a motion and a second.
That's why I don't miss meetings.
Any other discussion? I'm gonna just take a guess and say we can call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay. Congratulations, Commissioner Belto. Angela, item number 7, update and presentation on Reignite Reno.
Okay, I am going to share my screen. For the record, Angela Foose, Acting CD Director. We have been in COVID for about 5 months now, and it occurred to me that I haven't really given the group an update on what the city of Reno is doing in terms of COVID. I know we all know that we're all working kind of remotely and alternating schedules and doing the same thing that the rest of the world is doing, but specifically, what is City of Reno doing that's maybe different and unique about to deal with COVID? So I wanted to give you guys an update, and as part of that, I know that there was also interest in learning about public comments and what is the city doing about taking in public comments. So this will be wrapped into that discussion as well. So we started an initiative called Reignite Reno. And this started a couple months ago. The intent was really to look at COVID relief and recovery. The first couple months of COVID, we were all shut down and just trying to figure out what the heck is this. And then as the governor started new directives that opened businesses, we said, okay, how can we help these businesses open? Most of the businesses that were allowed to open had limited capacity. Many of them were limited to 50%. Some of them have even been shut down a second time. So we're looking at ways that we can help both residents and businesses during this situation. I wanted to give you an update on each department at the city and kind of what we're doing. There's been a lot of questions about what is happening in the development community. From a building permit perspective, here is a graph that shows you the last 12 months, and this is from July of last year till June 30th of this year. And the gold color is the total number of permits taken in each month. The green color is the number of hard copy permits, and the blue color is the electronic permits. So you can see the blue was pretty low for the first 8 months of the year, and then it spiked up in March, and again it spiked up in April, May, and June. Ironically, as COVID hit, literally the week that COVID hit and businesses shut down is the week that the city of Reno was able to release our electronic permit submittal process. And it just so happened that it coincided with COVID, but it allows us to actually take in building permits electronically so that developers, anyone submitting a building permit no longer has to come to the city. They can do it all online, remotely. So this is an interesting chart to see. We are still booming. I mean, the good news is the number of building permits that have come in during COVID has not slowed down. Things started to slow down a little bit in April and May, and then jumped back up in June. The number of building permits submitted in July, I think, was at its highest that it's been since 2005, which is amazing. So that's where we're at building permit activity-wise. Also on planning and engineering cases, these are the cases that you see. Tentative map, special use permit, zone change. This also includes things that you don't see, like parcel maps and reversion to acreage maps. So again, more on the planning engineering side of cases. Comparing a year ago to where we've been in the last 5 months, March, things definitely slowed down. April, they spiked back up, and then we've been pretty consistent. May, June, July, we've been pretty consistent with how we've been through the remainder of the previous 8 months. Business licenses. When COVID hit, we set up a deferral fee program. So those businesses that were shut down, we gave them an opportunity to reach out. There was a form they could fill out electronically online, let us know what the reason was, why their business wasn't operating, which we all knew why. And then we gave them some relief. So this allowed them to defer paying their business license fee. They will have to pick that up again in September. We will be revisiting this issue as some of these businesses, such as bars, have closed down a second time. We're doing the best we can to help these businesses so that they don't have to go out of business. In the last 5 months, we've had 280 requests for business license deferral relief. Other things that we've done, just big picture wise, from a kind of a zoning perspective, we took a hard look at how are these businesses supposed to reopen using social distancing guidelines. Drive-throughs was a major one. Most of the time when you guys see a drive-through come before you, it's because it's a special use permit that's been triggered. During COVID, we are temporarily relaxing some of our regulations. So we are allowing drive-throughs that maybe weren't there before, but are now there and operating differently. During COVID, we're allowing these types of operations. Outdoor operations is a big one. When a small restaurant is allowed to open, but only at 50% capacity, how do they stay open? So we are allowing outdoor operations. We typically would have a process they would have to go through. Sometimes it would trigger a special use permit. Sometimes it would just not be allowed because they don't have enough room set up within their parcel to do outdoor operations. So we have relaxed that and said, if you want to open your restaurant with tables in the parking lot, you can do that. Again, we want you to do it safely, but we want you to bring all those tables in at the end of the night. We don't want you to have loud music. We don't want you to have dining hours outside of your allowed operations. So we're being flexible and we're trying to help these businesses. We're also doing it with construction activity. OSHA, as some of you have known, have been going around to some of these construction sites and shutting them down or tagging them and saying you have too many workers working inside these buildings. It's a problem with these trades. So when you have let's say a trade coming in doing cabinets and painting and floors and plumbing, and they're generally kind of all working in there at the same time, there's too many of them close together. So we are relaxing some of our hours of construction and allowing indoor construction activities to occur evenings and weekends. And again, this is temporarily only during the COVID. They cannot do construction activities outdoors, but they can do 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, construction activities indoors. And so the hope is that some of these trades can alternate schedules and come at different times. The other big thing is the long-term regulatory changes. We have all been following the zoning code update, and that was put on hold when COVID hit. Unfortunately, when COVID hit in March, we were right at the tail end. We were ready to start going out for public comments and kind of taken to that last phase. And so that's been temporarily stalled. The good news is that we are bringing it back to life. We have a schedule now. We're just releasing the latest draft. We've been working with a consultant during COVID, and so we took all the comments that we got prior to COVID, and we made those changes, and so now we have a timeline, and we are looking at December for actual adoption. How that affects you guys as Planning Commission, we have 3 meetings scheduled during your normal Planning Commission meeting, where we will go through and review the zoning code update. I'm going to send you all a memo, but just as a heads up, starting in September, we have 2 meetings in September where we will give you updates on the zoning code, and then also a meeting in October. After that, we'll be going to City Council. They'll be reviewing it in pieces, similar to how you guys are reviewing it in pieces. We're also doing a pretty extensive outreach process. Again, it's tough with COVID because you can't do public meetings in the sense that we were doing them prior to COVID. But we're going to be doing more outreach. We're trying to do more things virtually and online, trying to get the word out. We're going to be sending out a giant mailer to parcel owners that are in the city of Reno, letting them know if there's any changes to their zoning proposed. So there'll be a lot of work, intensive work, really over the next 4 months. And then as we lead up to adoption, hopefully in December. So that is very exciting news. Oops, hold on, guys. There we go. Outdoor dining. So anywhere where we have a public right-of-way, such as sidewalks, we do allow outdoor dining, but you have to go through a process, and it's a permit process. Through COVID, the work in Midtown has been fast-tracked, which has been good because there's not a lot of activity in Midtown. So where we used to have a 3-foot wide sidewalk in portions of Midtown, now we have a 10-foot wide sidewalk. The good news is we have room for tables and chairs. Again, through COVID, we are saying, all of you restaurants, all of you bars, all the retail, if there's things that you can do outside, push it outdoors, now is your chance to do it. So we have been proactively talking to the businesses in the Midtown area and letting them know that we do need them still to fill out certain permitting requirements, but we are not coming in as regulators. We are coming in more so as the friendly city of Reno, saying we want to work with you. Let's see if we can come up with something that works, that meets our code requirements, meets our ADA requirements. So we've been trying to be proactive rather than reactive in that sense. So to date through COVID, we've had 25 different inquiries for folks in the Midtown downtown area, and we've had 12 different applications actually come in for outdoor dining. Again, these are all temporary permits that we are trying to kind of fast track so that these restaurants and businesses can stay open. Arts and culture, this has been probably one of the areas that's been hit the hardest. Everything had to shut down. No special events. Farmers markets were on hold for quite some time. They are now starting to happen again through social distancing requirements. Food Truck Fridays, all of that has been basically put on hold. We did have an event called Feed the Camel. It was every Wednesday down at McKinley Arts Center with the food trucks. Unfortunately, we had to shut it down again because one of the more recent directives is that we are kind of in that red zone. So we can only have 25 people congregating. Previous to that, we could have 50 people congregating. But because we are in what's considered a red zone, just in Washoe County and in Nevada, we had to push that down to even a smaller group. So we are doing the best we can to try and come up with creative ways to still have outdoor activities. One of those is the Reno Recreates events, where we are encouraging people to come together, again, socially distancing in outdoor events. We've had 3 events at a couple different parks where we've actually shut down some of the streets, brought some of the neighborhood out. And so here's some images to kind of show you what's been happening. It's unfortunate that we can't have all the special events that we typically have in the summer. So this summer, it's been a huge hit for all of the special events, vendors and programming. The other thing we're working on is helping the residents. There's a huge need for people that cannot pay their rent or pay their power bill or pay their phone bill. So we have money set aside where we're able to help those in need. This is separate. Oh, I think my computer just died. Ah, I did. Can you still hear me? Yes. Am I still
We
on?
can still hear you.
Okay, well, Michelle's going to bring up my PowerPoint,
just one
and
moment,
I'm going to keep
please.
talking. So COVID Cares money. That is, each jurisdiction across the nation really was given some federal money. And this is a separate pot of money that you have to use, you have to spend by December 30th. So the city of Reno was given $46 million. And again, it has to be used towards COVID. It can't be used just to pay our bills, or City of Reno bills, or City of Reno projects, or something that was already budgeted. It has to be specific to helping anything associated with COVID. So separate from the pot of money I just talked about, where we're helping tenants pay their rent, we have $46 million that's been set aside for other purposes. So a chunk of that money will be going to help businesses, and a chunk of that money will be going to help tenants who are not able to pay their rent. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Michelle. Great. So again, I think we just talked about this one. So we've been helping those that we can in need with paying their utility bills, paying utility deposits, and helping with rent. Next slide. Parks and Rec. This is another one that's really just been devastated through COVID. Many of our parks are able to open now, which is good. Some of our community centers are not able to open. So this gives you just kind of an update of where we're at today. This is a snapshot. It seems to be changing by the week as the COVID cases go up or down. One of the things that we do at the city is a lot of childcare facilities. You know, during the summer, normally we have summer programs, a lot of sports activities. That vacation station helps with kids that normally are in school, and then during the summer they're on summer break. So all of that is drastically changed. And we are able to open a couple of those places for the vacation stations. The Evelyn Mount, the Plumas Gym, and the McKinley are 3 locations where we are open. We do have limited capacity, though. It's not the same capacity that we had prior to COVID. The before and after school program, that is something that we work with Washoe County School District on. So we have been working with them as they're working through how are they going to open schools, what is that going to look like. We're trying to amend our programs as well to keep up with them so that parents that put their kids back in Washoe County School will have a before and after school program for those kids. And then on the aquatic side, we have 3 pools, the Northwest Pool, Idlewild Pool, and Trainer Pool. Those are open. The pool at the Evelyn Mount Northeast Center there's some construction going on, so that one's closed. And again, timing-wise, it just so happened that that's being done during COVID, so that's closed anyway. All of our adult athletic events are closed until further notice. So all the softball, kickball, volleyball, all those events are on hold. And then the Neal Road Rec Center is a great community center for the Neal Road area that is open. So we do have some programming going on there, but it is with limited capacity. Next slide, please. And then finally, just in terms of what is the city doing on public comment during COVID? We initially just shut down meetings altogether in March and then started meetings again in April. And this is our city council and our planning commission are the 2 ones that you guys hear about the most. We have put most of our community boards on hiatus until November. That includes the NABs, it includes the Park and Rec Department, or the Parks and Rec Committee, it includes the Senior Services Committee. So the majority of committees that the city controls, we've just put all of them on hold unless they are required. So Planning Commission, we are required to have that because it's things are happening and development is still moving forward. We've modified the way we do it. You guys are all at home. A few of us are here in chambers, but we have no people in the audience. The biggest challenge that we're dealing with is how do we make sure that we still take in public comment? As long as we are, abiding by the governor's directive, we can't have more than 50% of people in the room. People still have to be spaced out 6 feet apart. It makes it tough to actually allow anyone to come into the chambers besides staff because we quickly run out of room and aren't able to meet the social distancing requirements. So we have increased the way that we allow public comment to come in. We've always had mail, just snail mail. We've always received emails. We are now taking voicemails and we have a software set up so that people can call in and leave a message and that message is transcribed through the software and then that message gets emailed out to the planning commissioners. So it's a lot more efficient than us having to take down somebody's information and then try and pass that along to you and maybe there's miscommunication. So word for word, what they put into that voicemail is what gets transcribed and sent to you guys by email. And then we have online forms. So anyone that maybe doesn't have email, they can click on a form online and fill out information through that mechanism as well. Recently, our city council meetings have been, I'm going to call it Zoom bombed, where we continue to have people that want to provide live comment over the phone, which they can do, and they make threats, they use a lot of vulgar language, say very inappropriate things. So time and time again, we thought, okay, let's give it a whirl. Our fingers aren't fast enough to hit mute before they have already gotten a couple seconds worth of foul language and inappropriate things out on the record. So at this point, our city council and our city management has decided that we are not going to do live public comment. In the meantime, we are working on other tools to try and supplement that. Some of our challenges is just from an IT perspective, running these meetings. While we can do them through Zoom, we also have other software that we have to pair that up with. So to be able to bring in a new software that will work has to be able to pair up with the existing software that we have. So we are working on trying to find alternatives. We're looking at other agencies. What are they doing? I know there's been a lot of talk about looking at what the legislature is doing for their public comment. We're not ruling anything out. I just want people to know that we haven't forgotten about it. We are trying to come up with alternative ways to provide public comment. It's definitely a challenge. I mean, COVID in general is a challenge, and these Zoom meetings, they're not ideal. I mean, they're awkward. But this is the world we're living in right now, and I think we are, we're doing the best we can. We want to be able to keep development moving forward, but we don't want to exclude people from weighing in. So with that, I know that some of you have asked for more of a robust discussion, so I did want to put it out there to the planning commissioners, let you know that we are here to take your feedback, your comments. If there's things that you are seeing other jurisdictions doing that's working, let us know. We're always looking for ways that we can improve. So this is kind of an opportunity for you guys to provide some insight to us on what we can do to make this process better. Anyone?
Oh, sorry, Angela, I wasn't sure if you were done.
No, sorry about that. So yeah, this is kind of where I'm just wanted to give you guys an update on what the city's doing in general, but more specifically, when it comes to our planning commission meetings and taking public comment, are there things that we can do better that you're seeing other agencies doing? Again, we are open to suggestions, and hopefully we can come up with a more streamlined process that can get us through the next couple months of COVID.
Arthur Munoz, I have a quick suggestion, or I don't know if this was discussed or not before, but I believe public comment is a very important part of this. And I think it's something that should happen in every meeting, should be happening now. To be honest with you, I'm almost a little bit hesitant to make any decisions without people having the ability to make a live public comment in the middle of these meetings. So what if there was something like a 30-second delay? They do their comment, they're on a delay if there is what you were talking about, vulgarity, or they go off in a rant or something they're not supposed to be doing, that we have, or somebody there in council has the ability to mute that. They see it coming ahead of time before the general public does. And that way they're able to mute it, kind of like they do on, sports programs, stuff like that. Is that even a possibility?
It is. Like I said, our IT department and our city clerk have investigated. They've spent hours investigating different ways we can do this. One of our biggest challenges is that we don't just have Zoom. We have other software programs that we're running at the same time. I mean, we are on TV as we're holding these Zoom meetings. So there's meetings running that are live. So it makes it tough for us to try and figure out a program that will mute, but yet not let those in TV land hear it before it's muted. Again, we'll keep looking. That's the first thing that everyone has said is, why don't we have a 5-second delay? And I agree. They do it on radio. They do it on live broadcasts. We just have to find a way for the city to do it, given the software that we currently use.
So Angela, one of our comments that we received via email included the notice, the little yellow card that people get for the meetings. And it seemed like that was a little bit hard to navigate. If I was getting a notice, it says the location of the meeting still has the physical address on there.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to see if I can. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, yeah. So we have postcards that we send out. It lists the project and the project number and information about how people can provide comment. And that has also been a work in progress. When we had to shut down live meetings, forget the live public comment, just when we had to stop saying, we had to stop allowing people to come into City Hall to attend meetings. We started rewriting those, the wording. It's an evolving process. The other thing that we've struggled with is giving people links to our agendas on those little postcards and links to the staff reports. So we are working on creating links. I mean, right now our links are like 20 symbols and numbers and letters long, and they're, people are not going to type that in. So we're coming up with better ways to do that. We're also looking at putting one of those QR codes on postcards so that if people have a cell phone, they can just scan it and then get access to staff reports much easier. Not everyone uses QR codes, but I think it's probably a good tool to start trying. So we're trying to evolve those. I think with COVID, we all thought this was going to be a short-term thing, and it's just not. It's going on much longer than we had anticipated, and especially with not being able to have more than 25 people in a room or 50 people in a room. I think it's going to be a while before we can have people back in the building.
Yeah, so on that notice, do you mind if I share my screen really quick?
Yeah.
So I think, there's an opportunity here to, make things a little bit bolder, or, and one of the other comments that we received was there was training at Washoe County website for Zoom meetings. I don't know if that's possible. I'm just throwing stuff out here, but if I'm, getting something like this in the mail, I'm not really going to be able to navigate this very well to know that I'm going to have to go to a Zoom meeting. I mean, he said he couldn't even find the link, and I understand that. I know we're all trying to do new things.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I think we need to rewrite those public notice postcards to make them user-friendly and give them direct links to things that they can just open up without having to navigate our website.
Commissioners?
Chair, if I could, I think, Angela, one of the things we talked about at the last meeting, and my desire to have this conversation tonight was, stemming from the applicant essentially saying that, he tried to reach out to the community via, traditional means. But that, having community meetings, that's not really an opportunity. The NABs aren't functioning. So, we started brainstorming some creative ways to, engage the community at that, project level as these, these applications come in. And for me, it seems like the logical step is to, identify ways where we can get the NABs back up and running, even if it's from, a digital platform like we're doing, but at least providing an opportunity for members of the, the community that are directly affected by applications, have a concern, all the reasons that, the city reestablished the NABs several years ago to begin with. I think that's where at least the people that I've interacted with are feeling the disconnect, is that they can't access these meetings to provide public comments. They can't access council, but there is the mechanism if, comments can be provided in a forum like at a NAB meeting, then that information can be, at least passed on to the Planning Commission. Because, I don't want to speak for the other commissioners, but, I look at those NAB comment forms, and I, really rely on those a lot of times for some great information and thoughts, that, maybe I didn't think of when looking at the application. So, I think it's a really important part of the process that right now is critically missing.
Yeah, no, that's good feedback. I think there's been a lot of just general public concern over how do they find out about projects ahead of time. And that was something that the NABs did, was helped to provide information so that there wasn't misinformation out there before it got to Planning Commission. Mr. Marshall.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson, actually on this one, one thing that happened tonight that I appreciated in Heather's presentation for our first couple of items was that she actually summarized the public comment that had been received, you know, the issues that had been brought up. And I think that's critical, because the other piece of feedback that I'm getting is that, you know, how do you know your comment is being heard, is being, you know, part of the record? I mean, it's one thing to say, hey, there were, you know, 12 comments received and you know, this, but I think if staff has access to those as a part of staff's presentation, that it should actually be a bulleted part of the presentation at this point, where we're specifically being told, you know, we make a disclosure that we've read them, but let's get it on the record in the meeting that's being broadcast and is available on the website. And I say this both for this commission, but also for city council, because I think, you know, we're still opening it up for public comment here. We're just not getting any. You know, if they've shut it down, any of these projects that go before them, part of the whole presentation for them and for us, you know, let's summarize what the concerns are and respond to them. If we're not able to get people here doing it live, let's make sure that we're hearing about, you know, concerns of traffic or concerns of safety or lighting or whatever they would be. You know, let's put them on the record, and then I think people are going to get a little bit better sense that, hey, yeah, maybe I'm not there in person, but the comment that I raised was discussed specifically in the meeting. So, you know, I can't really speak to how to make the Zooms easier or how to get these other meetings going, but I think with everything that we've put in place in order to accept public comment, let's make sure we take the next step to really prove that that public comment is being heard the same way, maybe not the same way it would be if it was done in person, but at least those items are being brought up as part of the visual and, you know, audio record of the meeting.
Yeah, that is a great idea. We can start putting information in the PowerPoint slides, or at least getting something on the record verbally. I think that's a great idea.
Just, you know, just quickly, up at the lake, we have tried a bunch of different kinds of mechanisms to get people involved, you know, in these virtual meetings. And you're doing all the things that we've been doing, you know, I think actually the Zoom platform is better than one that we're using. But we're just not getting, you know, the amount of public comment. People are still used to it. They want to go to a meeting. They want to comment in that manner, and you know, waiting for their name to be called and to speak at a you know, virtually is somehow it's just not as, people just aren't engaged in that manner. So we've put significant effort into stakeholder meetings and trying to really drive community engagement via stakeholder committees. Now we can do that because we don't have nowhere near the amount of, you know, public items that are coming to the city council or to planning commission. So it's easier for us to do, but that's what we found to be the most, or the best substitute, is to try to really flesh out those comments more out in the field than in the meeting room. So I think we're all struggling with the same issues, but that's the only lesson that we have that, you know, might be transferable down here. It may not be, because just of the sheer number of items that the city of Reno works with. I would agree with everything that, I think everyone has commented on. I do think, Commissioner Johnson, that in general, I see, we do get, maybe not in the staff reports per se, but usually there is a synopsis of the public comment to date. I think we have been getting that. But I do think your comment about having, what can we do to make people feel heard is I think critically important in this time period, as we all have pointed out, I believe. So my 2 cents, thanks.
So I like the idea of the stakeholder meeting. Just as an example, let's take any of the projects tonight. If we had, let's say, the 7-Eleven, would the applicant send out a letter to the neighbors and say, I'd like to invite you to a meeting? Or how are you guys kind of reaching out to those neighbors or stakeholders?
Both probably in combination with staff and applicant. We probably have, just the staff has got a fairly good grip on who our significant stakeholders are. And then there's, it's just, I think it's a little bit of a different role because it's so much smaller in scope. And things are more local, maybe, I don't know. So it is just a combination of, we kind of know who are the projects that come to us, what are the big ones, and who's involved, and who are kind of the neighborhood contacts that in various different communities, whether it be the Latino community or depending on where the project is, we need to figure out what are those interests that we need to reach out to. And some are easier to get in contact than others. So it's a combination of both, Angela.
Yeah, and I can see where Verdi, I mean, that's probably a prime example, right? We know projects in Verdi, we know kind of who the stakeholder groups would be. We have contacts with those folks. Some of these other areas, we don't have. I mean, even the projects today, we couldn't do that for 7-Eleven. We couldn't do that for Aspire. I think there's things that we could be doing. I just don't know how we do that safely. Do we send out letters and say, come to a meeting, but just kidding, don't really come unless we know there's going to be less than 25 of you?
We don't do meetings. We just don't do them.
Yeah.
So you're no longer attending a meeting. You're trying to communicate with a representative. You are, trying to do a Zoom meeting. You are, different alternatives to get that feedback. But, we don't do meetings.
Okay. I do feel like one of our biggest challenges is getting out the right information on some of these projects where we get a lot of public comment, and it's kind of a copy and paste public comment where you can tell the neighbors are not really informed of the project because they're all providing the same public comment rather than coming up with their own individual ideas about the project. I think those cases in particular, there's misinformation out there. And we see it a lot with nextdoor.com, where somebody will post on nextdoor.com or on Facebook or whatever that neighborhood group is. There's this project going on, we need to oppose it, here's how you reach out to your planning commissioners. But then I don't know that people actually know what the project is. But that goes back to your point about if we had a NAB or some mechanism for people to go actually learn about the project, maybe it would solve some of their questions before it got to planning commission. And it could be an issue of we need to find a better platform to inform people. I think that's at a minimum, that's one thing we need to start figuring out how to do a better job of.
Thank you, Angela, for bringing us this information and for continuing to work towards more public participation.
Absolutely. And again, if there's things that come up, feel free just to reach out. This is fluid. I wish it was I wish we had a set date when we knew it was going to end, but we don't. So we're just navigating it daily with, with changes as they come.
Okay, commissioners, item 8, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report. Commissioner Johnson or Gower?
We have not had a meeting recently. At our last meeting, we, sorry, it's getting late. We unanimously decided to advance a recommendation to the governing board to nominate interim director Smith, Jeremy Smith, to be the permanent executive director. That was our last meeting, if I remember right.
I think you guys had one a week ago.
Oh, yeah, we did have another meeting. Commissioner Johnson remembers that one better than I do.
I wasn't there.
I just remember it because I ended up, now I'm the vice chair of the commission. That was my only takeaway on that whole meeting.
How could I forget?
There was a couple of basically Sparks and Washoe County projects there that were a couple of reversions back to, sphere of influence that was in Sparks sphere of influence sent back to Washoe County. There was a couple, I think there's one project of regional significance that was supported by the other commissions, and I think all of them were ratified or recommended for approval at the regional level. So I don't have any specifics, mainly because they weren't any Reno projects.
Thank you. Angela, do you have any staff announcements?
Yeah, maybe updates for City Council. City Council was on break for about, 4 or 5 weeks, and now they are back up. We've had 2 meetings in the past couple weeks. Daybreak was one of them. City Council approved the certification, so that is the final step in the Daybreak PUD master plan project. Next step for them is to submit a tentative map, so that will be back before Planning Commission when that happens. Cordova master plan, that was a master plan and zone change that was in the Verdi area. That was reverting or changing the zoning and master plan from a commercial to a residential use. That was approved for first reading. That's still going on to a second reading before it's officially adopted. And then, of course, on to Planning Commission for that master plan amendment. Other big things, there was a text amendment that was before you guys recently for the development agreement. That was pulled from our last council agenda. It is scheduled for review next Wednesday. So I will have an update for you at your next meeting on what direction council's going to go with that development agreement. And this never came before Planning Commission, but as a heads up, last fall, council initiated a moratorium on pet stores that sell dogs and cats. So that has been in the works for a while. We just had our first reading as an ordinance change. It affects our Title IV, not our Title 18, so that doesn't come back before you guys. That's our business license section. But essentially, it will prohibit the sale of cats and dogs at pet stores. We have one business in the city of Reno that has a pet store that sells dogs, and so this would affect them. Once this ordinance goes into effect, which will be next week, it would eliminate, basically put a ban on any pet store or commercial store that sells dogs and cats. Other than that, the Skyways. The Skyways text amendment, we've had a first reading. Had to go back to a first reading because the City Council modified the language. That will be back before a second reading next week. The special use permit for the UNR Skyway project also goes to City Council next week. So I'll have an update for you guys at your next meeting on those topics. And I think that's it.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome our newest commissioner,
Yes,
From
I'm
Ward
so sorry.
4.
It's getting late. I don't have my computer. Yes, so with that, Arthur is here, and I don't know if any of you knew this. Arthur, he was previously on the Ward 4 NAB, and Bonnie Weber appointed him to sit on Planning Commission. So we are very excited to have a new member to Planning Commission, and it's great that you have a little bit of experience in this world, just from your NAB experience. But maybe you can tell the group a little bit about your background and yourself, and kind of what prompted you to want to be a part of the Planning Commission.
Yeah, thank you guys. I am really excited about this, a little bit nervous. It does seem like a huge task. So I am a little bit nervous about the whole thing, but I am also very excited. I can't wait to jump in feet first. But Bonnie asked me to get on the NAB about a year and a half ago. I did it right away because I had some concerns with North Valley's up where I live, and the state of the baseball fields and softball fields up there. And I coach competitive sports. I have 8 kids, and so I'm at a baseball or a softball field pretty much every single day. And so there were some areas that I felt needed some help, and Bonnie had saw my message and reached out to me and said, "Hey, you think there's a problem here? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is and try and make a difference?" And so that kind of led me to here I am now. And like I said, I'm really looking forward to this.
Welcome. We're glad to work with you. I would like to say I think Commissioner Hawkins did a wonderful job. I'm sad to see him go, but always glad to see new faces with new experience. Item 10, Commissioner.
Before you get off that, Madam Chair, I just want to point out the sort of the longstanding tradition is that on your first meeting, you actually have to make a motion. And we never had a chance to tell you that, and yet you still ended up making a motion. So usually it ends up being the motion to adjourn, but you actually jumped right in and made a motion on one of the action items. So I commend you for that. Welcome. And you basically passed the first initiation that's not even a real initiation. So congratulations, and look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
I thought you guys didn't tell him, and we're just waiting for 5.4 I thought you were going to telepathically tell him, because nobody was saying anything. Item 10, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. I see none. Michelle, item 11, do we have any public comment?
No, we do not.
Item 12.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
So moved. All those in favor, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Night, everyone.
All right, everybody, thank you so much.
Who knows?
Thank you.